Hello. And as Rav comes back, welcome everyone to the last webinar of our Community Summer Camp series. If you cannot see it, I'm wearing the hat with the Community Summer Camp logo, but it's difficult with the background. There you go. So today we will be talking about fortifying your business with durable growth during economically uncertain times, or a downturn, or any of the other words that we've been using on LinkedIn to describe what's going on. I'm extremely unfortunate. Wow, I'm extremely fortunate, actually, to be joined by an amazing panel to help me make sense of this entire topic. I will very briefly call their name and give them the opportunity to actually say something about themselves. So first up, we have Gemma Cipriani Espinera from Chili Piper. Hi, Gemma.
Hi, Remco. Thanks for having me. Yes, I'm from Chili Piper. We're a global software startup that provides routing and scheduling solutions for B2B revenue teams. So we're the people who make meetings happen.
There you go. Amazing. And then next up, it's a little iffy, but that actually is Kelly Capote. Don't mind the name. And she's from Gainsight. Hi, Kelly.
Hi, Remco. Hello, everyone. Kelly Capote, Chief Customer Officer here at Gainsight. If you don't know what we do, customer success management and product adoption platform to help you drive exceptional experience and outcomes for your customers. So excited to be here. Apologize that we couldn't get my name to work, but we figured video and audio over the name is the way to go. So here we are.
This works. It works very well.
I always wanted to see you, Remco, anyway. So this.
Well, I mean, we could swap. I can be Kelly in the next one. I think this is exciting.
Deal.
This is a great marketing idea, actually. So let's do that. Next up, we have Jeff Eckler from Market Source Inc. Hey, Jeff.
Hey, Remco. Hey, friends. Great to be here. Thanks for the time and the space. Market Source, we provide customer success, people, teams, product, and process for those that are either looking to grow, jumpstart, or augment their customer success teams and organizations. Excited to be here. This is going to be a lot of fun.
Agreed. I think so too. And then finally, we have Mr. Rav Dhaliwal from Crane Venture Partners. Finally on a webinar together again. Rav.
Yes, again, it's been a while. Yeah, hi everyone, and thanks for everyone for joining us. As Remco mentioned, my name's Rav. I'm a venture capital investor and recovering CS executive, I think is the best way to describe it.
Yeah, the recovering is always an interesting tidbit. Like you really, really suffered, something like that. Awesome. So maybe some final things, as we have a lot to cover here. So I like to call this housekeeping, but yes, the webinar will be recorded. And while I do encourage notes always, you don't have to. You can always watch it back, because we will send you the recording. And if you have any questions, feel free to pop them in the chat, and I'll make sure to pick them up and weave them into conversation somewhere, or at least get back to you with the answer. Are you guys ready to go?
Let's do it.
Do it.
Good. Then let's start. So some of you might not know, but at Gainsight, it's very common for any meeting, and in this case also webinar, to start with an icebreaker. So I wanted to do the same. So in any, doesn't really matter what round we go, what is your best camp memory? Or if you've never been to camp, I'm definitely one of those people, something that comes close to the pleasure of being on camp. Who wants to go first?
I'll go, Remco. Well, what I learned as a little girl is at Girl Scout camp is that I really am not a great camper. I think I went to Girl Scout camp once and never went back. But as an adult, I learned that I like glamping, which is more in like a legitimate cabin. And so being that I live in Texas, we have friends that have like a whole property and a cabin, and I love to go camping or glamping there. So give me like a cabin and real beds and I'll camp all day long. The tent part just doesn't quite work for me.
Kelly, you sound just like my wife. I always say Hannah likes to sleep under the stars, all 5 of them.
That is awesome. Maybe Gemma next.
Sure. Yeah, it would definitely have to be glamping for me too. But I did have one camping experience that was quite fun, and it was unexpected. At a Brighton Pride in England, which is one of the best prides that you can ever go to, and ended up camping there, which was a lot of fun. Many years ago. I'm not sure I could do it again.
Yeah, that's a whole different topic entirely. But do we grow out of camping? Maybe, I don't know.
I think it was just like a one-time thing. I just had the, pride experience come over me at the time.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely much more inclined to go glamping, I would say now.
Cool. Thank you for sharing. Jeff, tell us.
Gosh, didn't do the camp thing as a kid. My parents were fans of throwing camping gear in the back of the grocery getter, the station wagon, and then doing that thing because that was kind of where we were with resources. I will say about 10 years ago or 11 years ago now, once I moved out to Palo Alto, I had some friends that took me under their wing and got me into backpacking. So I've backpacked and slept over more than 5 stars in the Grand Canyon and Yosemite and things like that. And that's been a lot of fun. Looking to do that again in April of next year.
Nice. A pro camper.
Not a pro.
And now to the true pro of camping, Raph.
Yeah. Well, I said before I met my wife and before I got civilized, I actually did a lot of camping. I was a very keen wildlife photographer, so I was lucky enough to go all over the world camping and photographing animals. And I spent 5.5 months actually doing that and some volunteering work in Africa, where I camped every single day for 5.5 months. And my overriding memory is that I can take up and pack away a down tent in complete darkness. I've just done it so many times.
Wow, that's impressive.
Well done.
You win for the camping story for sure.
Yeah, that also beats my camping stories because, I mean, I only remember my parents trying to put up the tent in the rain with misery and screaming and all those kinds of things. So
yeah,
no,
I think that's been my wife's experience, which is why we don't go camping anymore. So
the darkness wouldn't work. I think my happiest memory was just being on a chair, drinking wine, looking at the stars in France. I think that's probably the best memory. But I've gone camping like 16 times when you were young, because Dutch people only go camping to France as their holidays. This is like the typical thing for us going on. So there we go. Thank you all for sharing. But this is not why we're here today, obviously. So we're here to talk about durable growth and setting up your business and your customer success teams for durable growth in economically uncertain times. We debated calling it a recession. I'm not really sure what the general opinion on that is, so we just call it uncertain times for now. So maybe to set the stage quite briefly, I think everyone has seen everything that's been going on, especially also in SaaS and on the stock market and valuations and everything else, but also more close to home or close to being human first. People getting laid off, unfortunately, in SaaS companies and companies also, I don't know, cutting back and struggling a little to stick to the plan that they had for the year. So we wanted to put that on a webinar and discuss, and especially also because customer success teams are usually probably is the first team that notices these things, especially also at our own customers. So I'm super happy to get to explore at least what you guys have been seeing going on, and also how you guys have been helping your teams and your customers through this. So maybe as a first question, can you guys help me describe what's currently happening or what you currently see happening at your customers or other businesses around you, and also what actions you've taken within your organization to deal with the current economic situation, if any? I mean, there's probably also still companies that are super fortunate to not have to do anything. And maybe start it, Kelly?
Yeah, I'll kick us off. So I think you gave a great overview, Remco, I think just from a macro perspective in terms of what's happening. So there's no doubt that across the board, there's a lot of uncertainty. Again, I don't know if we call it a recession or not, but I think what we're seeing with our customers is that most organizations are at least bringing the level of prudence and diligence to the table to get more efficient in terms of how they think about, the 3 to 5 year plan for their businesses. We were all certainly, operating in a little bit more of the mode of growth at all costs, right? And while NRR, net revenue retention, is still incredibly important, we have to figure out how can we drive net revenue retention, but in a way that's like more efficient growth, where we're balancing those levers of profitability and growth for the business. So I think what that means is lots of organizations are having, another layer of inspection right now in terms of the cost within their business. They're looking at budgets, what's actually moving the needle in terms of true business impact versus what's not. So for those of us in customer success, obviously being Gainsight, we're working with, hundreds and thousands of other success organizations. It's really partnering with them to help them understand how they can maybe, number one, scale and do more with less. And then number two, really partner cross-functionally within their organizations to make sure that they're driving towards the notion of outcomes and desired business outcomes so that they're above the line, so to speak, when it comes to vendor decisions. So what we do externally is kind of very similar to what I do internally with my team, right? So from a Gainsight customer success perspective, it reminds me a little bit, I've been saying, I feel like it's like deja vu from when like COVID and the pandemic first happened. And there was this increased level of appreciation for the customer base, which is great. So the good news is I think we really instituted some processes during that time back in 2020, where we amplified some things around risk management and renewal management that have continued on. Like we actually didn't take our foot off the gas because we realized by taking them to a next level of rigor, right, and operational excellence, that's actually a common thread we need to have at all times, good or bad. Like that's actually how you ride that growth roller coaster. So it's more of a continuation of really strong risk management. We've continued work on like our value outcomes framework end to end across sales, implementation, success, because all conversations need to be grounded in tangible ROI and business value. Like experience itself isn't going to do the trick. And then number three, we continue to focus on digital-led customer success. And programs to help scale the good work of our CSM. So it's not just a segmentation strategy, it's actually a program that can benefit the entire segmentation stack so that we can mobilize, our human capital and our CSMs to be, focused on the high value activities and find other ways via community and digital-led programs and campaigns, in-app, et cetera, to kind of help guide our customers to those outcomes. So those are the three big things I'd say that we're focused on internally, and then partnering with our sales and renewals organization to make sure we're having strong collaboration around risk and renewals.
Amazing. Also, definitely like the shout out for the digital-led programs, which we'll cover also a little bit later, but definitely super important. Gemma, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I just made a note of a phrase Kelly used there, grounded in ROI, which is precisely it. I think in any kind of tough market, that people are going to start thinking about consolidation and the way we look at it is we need to ensure that we're doing two things at all times. We have to improve efficiencies and improve performance at the same time. So fortunately, our product does that pretty simply, but that doesn't mean that we are necessarily doing that across our entire install base. So really the focus is for us in constantly asking ourselves, are the outcomes that we're delivering improving performance? Are they improving efficiencies for our customers? And if we do that, we know that we're probably going to be in a good spot through this rough patch. I think another interesting trend that we're seeing is that because budgets are being scrutinized more, some of our customers are maybe having less investment towards the research, learning and development aspects that maybe brought them to the places that they worked. And so we found an opportunity there to actually deliver that to our customers. Like, how can we support them through their own careers during this time when maybe they don't have as much spend from their own HR teams to, get them to conferences or introduce them to the right people, through learning and development paths. So that's another trend that we've noticed that we've started to, I guess, capitalize on.
Amazing. So you actually try to make that possible for them then?
Yeah, there's like 3 huge events coming up for our industry: Dreamforce, SaaStar, and HubSpot. We actually have members of our cab going on our dime. They are going to be at our stands, which is also great for us. But it's great for them to get that exposure to those conferences that they may not have been able to get funded to attend.
Yeah, I love that. It's a nice play. That's good. Raf or Jeff, anything to add?
I spend a lot of time with founders, especially startup founders, and really the things that are sort of top of mind are about runway, which is how do we extend it? How do we make sure we're capitalized well enough? Some of that involves rejigging the plan, the forecast, the hiring plan in particular, maybe pushing out key hires a bit later, that kind of thing. But mainly what I'm trying to do is inculcate in everyone that I'm working with this idea that the best source of funding is actually customer revenue. And really what you should be doing is doubling down on not just acquiring new customers, but doubling down on the customers that you have, because they're not only going to be a source of new revenue, they're going to help you with top of funnel if you do that right. And so that's kind of really what I'm spending a lot of time on with the teams and the founders that I work with.
That is a great quote. You always do this on webinars. You come up with these.
My job is to simplify and exaggerate. Remco.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, like any good VC.
Exactly. Well, exactly. Jeff, anything you want to add still?
From what Rob and Gemma said, and from Kelly, there just a couple things to maybe put some more on. With the fact that this is for, I guess, the benefit, if you can look at it that way, this is like the 4th economic downturn I've gone through in software. So there was the dot-com bubble with 9/11. There's the housing crisis of 08. There's COVID, and now here we are. So I think learning through all of that is empathetically and proactively moving towards your customers. So whatever that means to your customers. With COVID, one of the things that has been useful is looking at using pooled CSM teams and proactively reaching out to our customers and seeing, what are we looking at? And during COVID, we built a matrix, and we're not going to do this now, but or this isn't the environment, but something kind of that can be similar is building a matrix based on spend, lifetime as a customer, industry, and geo, and then seeing what kind of relief we can provide in a temporary basis. Standing up team, we stood up a team of pooled CSMs to go out and to proactively engage with customers right from the get-go that we identified, both digitally as well as just looking at market trends as customers that could really use a hand at that point in this environment. So we went out and did that. I really like what Gemma said about partnerships. We work with Gartner and SBI and a bunch of others, and then packaging up that information, saying, hey, these are the things that we're looking at for 2023, 2024, and becoming that more of that advisor with our customers, standing with them before they get to the battle lines, and what their budgeting might look like, and what kind of things we can do short term as well as long term to really start to help with the forecasting for the future. And then the third part that we looked at is, and we actually have been doing, is moving some of our dedicated resources from customers into pooled resources and shared services for our customers, and putting them into more of a at need or at demand base for our services, rather than have something wholly dedicated and then offering relief that way.
Yeah, I like that. It's also a great bridge. So I like that you already mentioned some of the things that you have currently changed or are doing or have seen change at customers, I guess. So are these changes that are more long-term changes and also based on a long-term strategy, or have you actually seen the strategy change this year at your company or even your customers from like a half-year point? Like, are we doing things differently now internally as well as we look to H2 and still sort of expect it to be difficult from an economic perspective?
Yeah, the cadence to budgeting and forecasting has changed. I think a couple of years ago, we would have just had a preliminary meetings and then launched into finalizing budget for AOPs. that would have been this pretty much standard process. Now it's much more collaborative across the board. So internally, document sharing and deck sharing, make sure that cross-functionally, especially on the revenue team side, that we're in alignment and that we're buttoned up with what our asks and envelopes look like going into next year. So that it started, real early last month, if not in June. So we saw this coming. For our customers, it's a lot the same too. I mean, I have a lot of meetings on Monday mornings like everybody else, and one of the themes that's been going on the past couple of weeks is that from the customer's angle, their backfills are not going to be filled, and so those are being held on to. Net new dollars are frozen. We're hearing a lot of that, and so the things that become opportunities then, as you look to how can you, from any organization standpoint, be more flexible, is there's a lot more open up the conversations for third parties, BPOs, outsourcing, saying, well, we can use something on a temporary basis that has low risk, more direct impact to the bottom line and NRR immediately. And we can stand some things up. We can use a higher quality of IP rather than to build ourselves. So we're seeing a lot of those dollars moving from, well, I'm not going to go back into building and the team or backfilling these open recs. So I'm going to move these dollars into services that I can bring in house for 3, 6, 9 months, and then reassess the situation that goes on. Because we still don't know what to call what this thing is we're entering or we're in. Yeah. We don't even know, right? Whatever this nebulous monster is, but it exists, and until we figure out what it looks like and what it's going to be doing next year and beyond, then a lot of you can't base decisions based on make decisions based on that, especially with highly dedicated resources and investments that are much more long term.
Yeah, agreed. Kelly, do you have anything to add? I mean, we've just, as I think it was Jeff who pointed out, like this is the second recession in a short term that we're going through, if we call it a recession already. Mm-hmm. And COVID also made businesses change a lot, actually, from day one to day two. So do we see a similar move now, or is it much more sort of like, are we still waiting to see what's going to happen before we make really big changes?
Yeah, I think we're all being, I think most of us are being responsible right now and hopefully taking a more, cautious, conservative stance to making sure that no matter which way things could swing, better or worse, that we're basically future proofing our business, right? We can always grow and add more things, but you almost have to plan for, a worst case scenario and just make sure that you're making the right decisions now. I know at Gainsight, one of the things, we're very mindful, like we do not want to get to a position that we'd ever have to do any headcount reduction, right? So let's just be very intentional. Let's look across our business. Let's make sure that we're making the right decisions that allow us to scale in an efficient way so that hopefully you don't get to those points where you have to make some of the harder decisions. I think that there is, like, as Jeff said, it is a little bit nebulous. Like, I remember when COVID happened, we all freaked out, right? And then things shifted pretty quickly. But hopefully that will be the outcome and it won't be as serious. But when I think about what our organizations need to do now, again, I can't reiterate enough that most of the strategies, I mean, Rav said it perfectly, like your customer base is your best revenue engine and growth engine for your business. So if you focus on those things right now, those are strategies that should drive your business for a lifetime. They're not a point in time strategy, in my opinion. So that good work is going to get that virtuous flywheel going, right, around retention, expansion, advocacy. So there's no harm in sort of over rotating into the customer base now, because I actually believe that's the fundamental strategy that drives, durable growth for the long term. So I think it's the right thing to do. Be calculated and be careful. But focus on the strategies and understand them in a way that this isn't just something that we're shifting, and if things actually get better, they go away. No, these are actually sort of the blocking and tackling of your business that you should have in place. And this is just a catalyst to really kind of get those fundamentals in place.
Yeah. So would it be going too far to also call it an opportunity then?
I think, I think that's a great, I mean, that's how we're trying to think about it, is like, this is an opportunity to find your advantage, right? Mm-hmm. And as an organization, get really clear in terms of how can you differentiate yourself for your customers. Some of that can be how you show up, being human first, partnering sales and CS, partnering together. Like Gemma said, there's consolidation conversations happening. Can you actually have a very strong value proposition that will help your customers, right? And can open up more wallet share for your organization. So I think there's always an opportunity inside of any challenging situation. You just have to, look at it the right way and get the right cross-functional and executive alignment to make it happen.
Yeah, I like that. So I've been here, I think also on LinkedIn, but also in this conversation, we've been hearing the words efficiency and durable growth and no longer growth at all costs a lot. So what does efficiency actually mean to you guys, or durable growth for that matter? What does that look like when you hear a phrase like that?
I'll give you my perspective on that, Remco. Efficiency for me is being able to answer the question, for every dollar that I spend, what do I get back from it and when? We never used to do the from when bit. We used to say, for every dollar I spend, what do I get back from it? But I think now in uncertain times, it's what do I get back and when do I get it back, right? Mm-hmm. And that's, I think, the key thing for anyone attending today, anyone in a leadership position, anyone running a company. That's what I really think you need to think about in terms of efficiency. It's like, we're spending money, what do we get back for it and when, right? And I think one of the key patterns that I'm seeing is, in order to do that really well, you actually have to be really good at doing customer discovery, right? Not just, I engaged with my customer, I had a review with my customer. It's actually, you have to do much more in the current uncertain times in terms of understanding their business, understanding what they're worried about, understanding what projects they've got in flight, who the people are involved, what their industry vertical is up to, what does it say in their public filings. You really have to get good at customer discovery. And a lot of the startups that I work with, they're highly technical, they're technical founders, and they don't know how to talk to customers, right? They don't know how to do discovery. It's like, if you want to put yourself on a footing of sustainable growth, you really have to get good at that. And that whatever strategy you have about being efficient, none of it's going to work if you don't know how to do good customer discovery.
I'm going to jump in here. When we were talking about some of these questions earlier, I like to continually suggest and emphasize the going into your CFO's office, getting together with the analysts from the team, and it's validating, and then asking, what are the other revenue orgs looking at? How do they solve these problems? Getting with those leaders cross-functionally, doing that. But what Rav just said is great, because what we take from there is, I need to do discovery of my customers, and then I need to validate with their bean counters. I need to validate with their number crunchers, because our team is looking at it from the side that we get from incoming, and that's great. But at the end of the day, it's really the numbers on our customer side that are going to dictate the future of our relationship. And so partnering with their finance and partnering with their analysts and simply asking for the access and the question might be a real differentiator to your place in their relationship with you versus other ways that they can go about it. So if you emphasize the desire and the interest in seeing how they crunch their numbers and what really matters at the end of the day on their spreadsheets and what goes up to the C-suite on their end, I think that is a big leg up and a really passionate way to open up a conversation and the door to getting in there and really changing the nature of their organization and the relationship for the first 9 to next 18 months.
Yeah. So have you guys, and maybe both Raf and Jeff, because you both made excellent points here. So have you guys given thought to how you can actually do this if you have a portfolio of a couple thousand customers? How can you make sure that you now are in charge and are actually looking at the numbers that matter for them, or are looking at least at doing discovery within your portfolio?
Well, I think it's related to what Jeff said. I think before you can earn the right to approach a customer and say, hey, we want to work with you and your finance people, you have to be able to earn the right to do that. And part of that is actually knowing then how to do good discovery, how to ask the right questions, how to get introduced to the right people, or how to reach out to the right people and not be afraid of making those asks. And I think, to oversimplified, I think the right mindset, and this is kind of the mindset I'm trying to inculcate into the CS leaders and teams that I'm working with, is you have to be seen to be a revenue leader, right? You have to adopt that mindset if you want to weather these uncertain times, right? You can't be seen as cost of goods sold. You may be accounted for as cost of goods sold, but everybody needs to think about you as a revenue leader, including your customers. They're not stupid. They know that you're from the vendor. They know that you want to get more money from them, right? Earn the right to have that conversation. Part of that is actually keeping that mindset of being a revenue leader. Am I being seen as a revenue leader? What else do I need to be doing, both internally and with my customer? And am I asking the right questions? And am I unafraid of actually driving those questions that Jeff mentioned about, we want to work with you, understand what's going on in your business so we can partner with you properly.
Yeah, clear. So does that mean that also, for example, has this caused a shift in the metrics that you're looking at then? If you want to be a revenue leader as a CS leader, do you now look at different things, or are things like NRR, et cetera, still the most important thing that you're looking at, but you're just approaching them differently?
Well, with my investor hat on, it's the same metrics, but I think it's much more now about the tactics. So some of the tactics have to change, or some of the mindsets have to change in order to drive the right tactics. Those metrics are still, they're always going to be super important.
Yeah, I would add on to, oh, sorry, Kelly.
Go ahead, Gemma.
I would add on to that from an operational perspective. I think when we talk about efficiency, it's how can I accomplish meaningful work with the least amount of time and effort? So it's kind of a question that you have to ask your team and really find out where it is that they are struggling with that. What is taking a lot of time for them? Where do they potentially need some air cover? And we see efficiency now as actually one of the core skills of being in the CS org at all levels. So, at my level, it's about being totally obsessed with the time that the team's spending to help customers achieve their outcomes, and then trying to build a map to bring the team towards being a team who customers are required to talk to, because it's a highly technical product, to more of a team that they desire to talk to because of their domain efficiency. But it really is a question you have to look at and ask yourself internally, that efficiency piece.
I think Gemma hits on a really key point there. And one of the very practical things that I've done in one role in particular, we were a very well capitalized company. We were growing very fast. But I actually did a time and motion study, to Kelly's point, on what the team actually spends its time on. Right now, they all grumble. They go, I don't want to fill in a timesheet. And it's like, this is not Big Brother. This is trying to work out, are there things we are doing that we shouldn't be doing, right? Now, it's obvious if I'm working with customers that we should train them, right? That seems like a pretty good no-brainer thing. And then I worked out that for 489 hours worth of training, we gained 15 grand in incremental revenue, right? But spending 280 hours on pilots drove 1.6 million in revenue. So if you don't actually stop to actually analyze what the team's doing, and then the efficient answer to the training question was, let's build a bot in the product. People will just train themselves. We'll keep an eye on completion rates. And then when they're completed, we'll go and do some top-up training, right? That's a practical example of things that we can be thinking about doing to drive that efficiency, as Gemma pointed out. It does mean you have to start figuring out what you're spending your time on and what you're getting back for it.
Awesome. Kelly, I think you were going to add something as well.
Yeah, I was just going to sort of add to the points that Gemma and Rob made. So I think absolutely, like, Rob, I like how you do the time and motion study. Like, that's ultimately how you're anchoring on what are the highest value activities that my team can be doing. And then to your commentary around like being seen as a revenue leader, where I often see this fall down is like, we try and make that leap to like, my team's doing all these things and look, retention is getting better, but we're not getting the credit and the attribution. So I think how you show up as like a respected revenue leader is being able to have that clear attribution of like those high value activities. What's the leading indicator that those are moving, and then doing the real regression analysis against how it's impacting expansion, retention, NRR, et cetera. And then that's when the eyes light up of your peers, your executive team, your boards, and they get it. So making sure you take the time to map out high value activities, what leading indicators are they moving, having a way to track and measure those systematically, and then ultimately the lagging outcomes. And that way you can mobilize your resources against the right set of things to increase, the growth in the business. So
yeah, 100%. And I think the litmus test for anybody on this webinar is, how is CS represented in the board deck?
Mm-hmm.
Or is it? Because if it isn't, fix that problem first, right?
Totally.
And then if it is represented, what is being discussed and by whom in that board meeting, right?
Yeah. So this is a great segue, Raf. Thank you very much. So I also wanted to talk about the board, because there's a lot of stuff that we can do on a lower level with our teams to make ourselves more efficient, or to add a bot, like you just said, or something. But how do you actually explain to the board that you're good now? Like, I know that the market is under pressure and everything else, but we've got it covered because our team is very efficient. Mm-hmm. With your CFO, it's probably a little bit easier because that's the eyebrow guy or girl, right? Like if you ask for more money,
I had CFO easier in the same sentence.
Eyebrow stays relaxed. Yeah, so that's a little bit easier to see. But how do you convince your board that you're efficient enough that they don't need to basically look at other ways to, I don't know, maybe even improve efficiency or ask you more questions?
Well, I'll put my board member hat on now. So as a board observer and someone who sits on boards, it's important to understand that efficiency is not some finite destination that you go, yep, we're efficient now, right? It's a continuum, right? It just continues. So I think from a CS perspective, it's basically making sure that you're reiterating with the board every time you speak to them, this is the mission of the team. This is how we measure the team and why. And this is how those measurements are going. And these are the activities we are doing or not doing to support those measurements, right? That story needs to just keep being reinforced every single time you are in that meeting and you are talking to the board, and actually educating them that this is a continuum. Next quarter, because we're going to come back to you and talk about quarter-on-quarter progression, these are the efficiency things that we are looking to drive over the next quarter. These are the initiatives, the projects, the programs that we've got underway. We're going to transition this segment of customer to a community-based approach, or this segment of customer is going to be more in product. Whatever it is, that needs to be then part of the narrative.
Yeah. Does the end result of that narrative then need to be, we saved this much money,
there we go,
or we increased retention, or we did something, or what's like the end point that you want to see as a board member from?
I'd love to get the rest of the panelists' perspective here, but as a board member, I want to see something that's really important to us, whether that's a headline metric or otherwise, being shifted in the direction we need it to go.
I think there's two ways you can go about this, and one is the sexy way, and that's NRR, and you can use some data to go against lookalike customers that are on the verge of expansion. Maybe they're adding integrations or they're doing massive data imports in your product, but building out a cohort of customers that look like they're on the verge of expansion, product usage, see however it is you determine that, and then set aside a team of pooled resources, or at least partially, and go after that with the human touch, and then digitally pad that around. So that's the net new and the NRR route. The other route is what I've done before, and that's at risk, right? So boards really like aggregated large numbers at scale, and so however you define at risk or red accounts, or your red stoplight accounts, take those, aggregate those up, and then put an actionable plan around them. First, show the board how that is very quickly summarized and what at-risk accounts look like. Then the activities that you're doing against those accounts to secure that revenue, which boards like a lot, and then roll that aggregation up into, okay, this is where it was last quarter, this is where we are, or even monthly, and then boil that back into, this is revenue that's saved and returned, and this is what the big fat ARR number on that looks like. So that would be one of the actionable things I would do.
I think Jess 100% right, and I would just add to that, and then also what your asks are of the board, because you want them involved in this process, right? So it's not just we're coming to tell you, we want to ask you for stuff, we need stuff in order to move these numbers.
Yeah, justify just holding on to what you have, or not being a target.
Yeah. So maybe going to Kelly, because I know a few months ago you actually shared your entire board deck with the rest of the world, and it actually was very amazing. So how do you look at this now? What has changed?
Yeah, I mean, again, I think if you look at the board deck sample pack that I put out there, I don't think it changes all that much, quite frankly. Again, like as Rob said, a lot of this is just evangelism and creating that continuity around what the success organization is, and letting them know like you have the operational excellence and rigor and control over the outcome because you understand that A, B, and C influence X, Y, and Z. And because of that, here's the programs and initiatives that we're running. And we believe that's going to yield, whatever results. I think the key difference is, I think as we think about efficient growth, if you just simply bifurcate that into efficient and growth, you are going to have, like, they still care about net revenue retention and gross revenue retention. I think probably even now more than ever, right? Because there is some concern and softening in terms of bookings and things like that a lot of organizations are seeing. So you still are going to present the same plan and story around what are you doing to preserve your customer base, understanding where the risks lie, and like really chart out your path to hitting your numbers there. And then I would pair that with, especially if the board is asking for you to become more efficient, et cetera, showing them how you're going to continue to sustain those same results or improve them, but that you're mindful and that you're working on certain programs that will allow you to drive efficiency within the team. Maybe that's what you're doing with your digital-led customer success program and efforts. Maybe you're doing more training and enablement or org structure changes, et cetera. So you can show them that you're aware that like you need to operate in the most efficient way possible. But it's very important that the board knows at the end of the day, you can only take that so far if you want to be able to sustain those financial metrics of retention and outcome. So that's, I think, where the give-take conversation needs to happen a little bit.
I think that's the key word, Kelly. I actually wrote it down here. It's all very well being efficient, but it has to be sustainably efficient, right? Because there is no point saying, well, we're cutting costs, we're cutting people, blah, blah, blah. Look how efficient we are. And then suddenly NRR goes from 144 to 120. You just might as well what's the point?
Yep.
Yeah.
And like that's our job, right? Is to socialize like that inflection point or that breaking point. Like I was having a conversation internally. I'm like, well, we could do that, but I think that's like a stretch too far, right? So we have to be we have to represent like at a point where it's just too efficient, right? And ultimately it's totally breaking down what our main outcome is.
Unsustainable, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, so maybe sticking with the efficiency narrative, but also segueing a little bit more into digital. So we've been talking about digital strategies, I think, for the last year and a half or so. How important is digital to you now? And also, can you guys give us an example of like a practical, actionable digital strategy that you rolled out to help with the notion of becoming more efficient as a CS team?
I can take this one. Yeah, so I think digital CS, it was sort of considered as a nice have and something that maybe not all SaaS orgs needed, particularly if they had enterprise customers only. But now it's really the must have, and it's kind of, you need to think digital first before you start to build your human programs around customer success. But I think the opportunity that's come from this tough market is that we've now got a lot more focus cross-functionally in our business on the need to power our digital CS programs with stronger product insights. And I think that connection wasn't really made until the market got tougher, because it was like, well, CS is efficient, they're doing a good job, the numbers are going up. But now that we can expect a softening, and are seeing a softening in new sales across the board, it's that focus is kind of thinking, well, all that time that we were spending on getting insights, data insights for prospects, we should be doing twice as much for our existing customers, particularly with what's in our control, such as product data insights. So that's been a great opportunity for us in particular at Chili Piper to focus on. Yeah. And now our data team are really partnering with us on that.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Gemma can see my notes, because I wrote product data and underlined it 4 times before you started speaking. So
We did.
I cannot agree enough. This is
Yeah.
what I'm hearing everywhere. Everyone's like, I need product telemetry. I need to be able to make that available to as many people as possible. And then I need some smarts to help me get some really useful insights out of it.
Yeah, because Gemma, I think also you mentioned that you set up this digital strategy also for inactive customers, for example. And with inactive, I also assume that comes from product data as well.
It does. And we've had that going for a super long time, and it's valuable across our entire customer portfolio. So even, our enterprise customers, if we see dips in an activity, that will send a trigger for their dedicated CSM to reach out. In the same way, if you're an SMB customer, it will set a trigger for a digital CS group, like a pooled CSM group to reach out. But now it's very much more, well, that's not enough. It's not enough to tell someone to take action or to, prompt a banner or prompt an email campaign once the problem's already occurred. So how can we get the deeper insights that could result in risk, even if the risk isn't fully there yet? How do we prevent that? How do we see that coming before the customer sees it coming?
Yeah, exactly. I love that. It's a good practical thing. I also see some questions in the chat around digital and getting started with it. So maybe a fun way to ask that question is, given that we're now all being asked to be more efficient and CFOs are definitely raising their eyebrows at requests for more hires, how do you get started with a digital CS strategy when you don't feel like you have the necessary skills in your teams? And maybe we can start with Jeff.
Yeah. The way that I go about this, whether it's digital or whatever the challenge is in regards to resources and business need, is I look at my team. What are the talents on my team? Where does my team want to grow as individuals? That comes from obviously one-on-ones and working directly with them. But what talents do they have, and what do they see as issues on the front lines? So that's for the ICs. Then I challenge my frontline managers and say, what things are we seeing at scale that we could build up that would take out a couple of problems at the same time? Customers need, our businesses need, and then where our team is seeing replication that we can scale. So maybe that's in documentation, maybe that's in a video, maybe we work into the product for digital-led assistance. Maybe it's a community issue. I give a plug for communities. Customers helping customers really at scale is what we have there. And so really thinking about what are the things that we're seeing on the IC level and the frontline manager level that would take those practices, scale them, and replicate them across the board when resources are tight.
Amazing. Kelly, anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, I'll double click into like, how do I get started? Because there's a lot of different things you can do with a digital ed CS program, but time is of the essence, right? To kind of mobilize around some of these things now. So there's simple ways without, it might not be the most progressive digital ed CS program out there, but just to get started, I would look across your customer base today. What are the CSMs doing? What is the journey? What are things that are repetitive and could be automated, right? Whether it's through email communications, in-app communications, are there things that you can standardize around templates or EBRs that can be automated? What types of things could be done in a one-to-many fashion, whether it's user groups or webinars versus one-to-one, CSM training, having to do everything in a very ad hoc way. So I would start there and look at your customer journey if you haven't, and get very clear on the different moments of truth or touch points. And are there areas that we can lean into more automation and one-to-many versus everything being human-led and one-to-one? I think that's the easiest way to get started. And then obviously from there, if you really want to get serious about digital-led customer success, what I'm seeing many organizations do is they actually think about it as a program, not as a strategy, not as like a segmentation strategy for their low spend customers. So I repurposed one of my SMB customer success leaders a few years ago, and now she leads our digital-led scaled programs at Gainsight. And the way we think about it is very often the programs or the nurture campaigns, things that we're doing, like the first version of it, like phase one is we'll do some experimentation on those lower, on our lowest tier customers. But then phase two, as long as it's a net neutral or net positive for the entire customer base, then we roll it out to the entire customer base. And then phase three is, okay, now how do we operationalize that and make it part of the customer journey going forward? So you can certainly use your like lower tier, lower spend customers, create a pooled model, do some experimentation, but I would really start to broaden your thinking around making, digital-led customer success a program for your entire customer base.
Yeah. And I love that you called out that this is for your entire customer base. And I think, because I think one thing that we continue to hear for especially digital-led programs is that it's mostly for SMB or customers that you feel like you aren't, well, and this sounds a little bit bad, but aren't worth the time of a CSM to actually spend on. But I think also the other side of that coin, what we also often hear is that this is something that you can only build if you have a larger organization. Like you need 500 customers or 1,000 customers, or I don't know how many, in order to actually start with digital ed. So how do you guys think about that?
Can I add one more thing real quick? Because I think we're talking about this a lot from a very inside out view, right? Of why do we need to do it? But I would also encourage y'all to think about it from an outside in view, like buyer behavior and like how they want to engage with your product shifting too. So they want to be able to self-serve, like how can you have a stronger community, right? Where you have your best practice, your how-to documents, they can engage with other people, share ideas. Like it doesn't all have to be so one-to-one vendor based. People want to learn from each other. They want to be able to self-serve. So if you think about it through that lens and take that outside in perspective, like we have to meet the customers in terms of how they want to consume our product and software. And that's certainly the way things are moving.
Okay, I think you touched on something super important there, which is the power of peer-to-peer learning. Mm-hmm. We're the vendor, we have our perspective, but do you want to actually talk to 500 other people that are going on the same journey of you or have solved all the problems that you are currently facing? I don't see anyone who's going to say no to that. So making part of your digital program, and you're right, it is a program as opposed to a strategy, is what can we be doing to facilitate more peer-to-peer learning, getting customers to help each other, right? And I think that is not only super powerful from an efficiency point of view, it's great from a top of funnel point of view, because all those people who are putting their hand up to help other customers, they're all champions and case studies in waiting.
Yeah.
Or potential future hires.
Right, and especially working in the tech market, like we're quite fortunate that we can do this. If we were in, healthcare or government or finance, this would be a lot tougher because maybe you wouldn't have customers who would be so receptive to being efficient in their own right. So I think it's a great way to phrase it, Kelly. It's the outside in view is just as compelling.
And guess what? Developers have been doing this since time immemorial. Yep. What is developer relations? It's customer success for developers, right? Sure. And what do? They foster community outside of technology, build it up, and then move them onto a platform. And that's how.
Yeah. All this really centers around CS Ops, right? So, if you don't have a CS Ops team, your team of CSMs and CSMs that are ICs are looking for ways to grow, or looking for ways to develop. Help them find projects that do replicate those things that CSMs are doing on a constant basis. Look to seed your first CS Ops team. You might even look at taking a CSM away from portfolio management, moving them into your CS Ops as the first CS Ops lead or hire in order to amplify the work that's being done and to help the most customers. And the other thing with your digital-led programs, whatever you do for your highest touch customers does trickle down and is viable for your lowest touch. So you have a lot of power of scale on that as well.
Yeah, I'd say to Jeff, if you don't have CS Ops, it's like throwing darts at a dartboard in a room with the lights out, right? The teams just try loads of stuff and you don't know if it's going to work or not. But Remco, to go back to the core of your question, if you don't have the skills, lean into your development team. Do they have developer relations, developer evangelists? Go talk to them. And if you've got a marketing team, especially people who are focused on customer marketing, learn as much as you can from them.
Exactly. I would say marketing team there. I do think that CS Ops is super important, especially also if you're setting up a digital led program. In general, it's very important, but especially for digital, because it will allow you to measure so much more, see so many more steps, I would say, in the journey that you normally follow, because you're using different channels, different kinds of things. It can also be a lot.
You're saving time because you're tasking someone to work out what are the best channels, what are the best products, what works, etc.
Yeah. So how do you I don't really want to talk about segmentation, but there's a question about segmentation in the chat, so I do want to cover it very briefly. So how do you make sure for digital strategies that you don't group, for example, only low spend, low growth customers with low spend, high growth potential customers? How do you guys think about these types of segmentation issues?
I think Kelly answered that perfectly, which is you might start there to experiment, see what works, but what you should be building in the program is for everybody in every segment. Right? I think it's a force multiplier for everyone else. That is maybe not in the smaller segment. You start there, but it's for everyone. And if you build that with that mindset, then I think that works really well.
Yeah, exactly. So
and then in the peer-to-peer side of things, I mean, there's also a persona aspect to this sometimes too, right? Like you might want a space in your community for administrators to get to know each other. You might want more of an executive space. So really leveraging into that peer-to-peer connection and making sure that it's relevant from a persona-based perspective, we found to be incredibly important as well.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know. I've always when we talked about this, I told people to approach it as a campaign, because that usually a lot of people campaigns resonate well, right? Like marketing and those kinds of things. People can imagine what you do as a marketeer with a campaign. So I always tell them, just imagine this being a campaign. You have a goal, some kind of hypothesis or something else, and you're going to use some channel or some tool to actually see if it works and if it sticks. Which I think is probably the easiest way to think about this. Michelle, I hope that also helps answer your question. And I also really like Jan's suggestion, by the way. We only have 3 minutes left. And we have so much more to cover. So I'm just gonna, pick and choose what we cover from here on out. So what was the last question your CEO has actually asked you to deep dive due to the economic downturn?
I can go. So we have all the hours that we spend with customers by different phases in the journey, and then all the activities, meetings, prep work, after work, etc., that we have to deliver in them. And we focused in on the adopt phase of our journey. And the question was, how do we save time on getting customers to the level of adoption that we need?
Good
save
question.
More time, so to speak, because we look at it every quarter, but that was a really big focus.
Yeah. That's a good question. Yeah. I like that question. Would also be very curious how you solved it, but unfortunately we don't have time for that answer. Anyone else?
I'll add on a little bit, maybe from a different angle. I mean, I'm constantly sharing out like our, longer term view from a retention expansion perspective. So that's not like a new deep dive. So I want to continuously build confidence in that direction. But I think what this has presented for us is just heightened focus on like expansion efforts, right? And how can sales and success, or even from a marketing perspective, right? How do we really double down on our integrated value proposition across all of our products and get very intentional about that? So it's leaning again into customer as your growth engine, because I think we have a lot of the great blocking and tackling and rigor in place on the retention side of the business. So just continuing to tap into, like, again, finding your unique advantage during these times and making sure that you're driving the right programs and things about that. So I've even shifted some of my strategic programs and focus points for the back half of this year to double down on things like digital-led customer success and our durable growth playbook, et cetera, so that we can really find the advantage during these uncertain times.
Amazing.
I'd like to point out customer success for channel partners. There's a force multiplier effect there. There's a replication both of motions and of digital. And a great many companies are relying on over 50% of their revenues to come from the channels. So I think looking and examining ways that you can help that flow in motion almost in a B2B2B could pay big dividends back.
Amazing. Also a difficult question to answer, but it's a good point. Yeah, and then maybe just to end on a high note, so because we're also out of time, so we'll do this very briefly. We've just come out of Q2, I think described by most as a difficult quarter. What was one thing that you're super proud of and very happy that you realized in Q2?
Hiring displaced stems from pandemic darling.
Nice.
On a personal note, I'm proud of actually taking 2 contiguous weeks off on vacation, which
Well
I
done.
haven't actually done for like 15 years.
Talking about difficult things to do.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah. And I did not cope well with 2 weeks off, I can tell you that.
Kelly and Gemma?
I'll just say that 133% dollar-based net expansion.
Oof.
That's awesome. Yeah, for me, we were very, fortunate even in Q2, we still exceeded our gross and net retention targets. So fingers crossed that we can keep the momentum going, but just very proud of the team for staying positive and keeping their foot on the gas.
Awesome. I love these. Thank you so much for sharing, and also sharing so much of your knowledge about what's going on right now, and also how you can deal with it with us today. I want to thank everyone in the audience for being here. As mentioned, the recording will be sent to you as soon as possible, as soon as it's done rendering. Usually takes like an hour or something, and then you'll be able to rewatch the whole thing. A special thanks to our panel: Raf, Jeff, Kelly, Hidden Kelly under a different name, and Gemma. Thank you so much for spending the time. I know you guys are all super busy, so thank you so much for spending an hour with us and sharing your knowledge.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
It's my pleasure.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks,
Take care.
everyone, and we'll see you soon for the next one.